Yo, Async Book Club, Steve here. So we're gonna do Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe, and I'm gonna do a little summary and then also talk about some of the quotes that I got in this book and highlights and stuff. Um, I will start off by just saying that I did not have a good feeling about reading this book. It felt a little bit awkward's not even enough of a word. Uh, let's just say when we think about Europeans coming to Africa, generally it's thought of, at least from my learning, that that was like a negative thing. The colonism, the colonizing of Africa, and what this book kind of does is it kind of justifies the colonization of Africa, and it justifies what Europe did when they came in and just basically uh, wreaked havoc, and it's a little bit weird. Uh, so I don't want to spoil it too much, but let me just first give a brief synopsis slash some general stuff. So this book is pretty much the top most important book that Chinua Achebe wrote, most famous book at least. Maybe he doesn't think it's his most important, but it's definitely his most famous work. This book is set in the Igbo village of Umuofia in Nigeria in the late 19th century. However, it could have been written 3,000 years ago, honestly. Reading through it, it feels biblical. It feels, there's like no reminder of anything, technology or anything. So, like, of any kind. So, this book could have been written thousands of years ago, and I would have believed it. The protagonist of the book is Okonkwo, who is a respected leader, and he was also a wrestling champion in Umuofia. So he was strong, powerful, respected leader. He was also known for his masculinity and his fear of appearing weak or effeminate. So he wanted to appear, he was strong, but he also wanted to he wanted to appear strong, and he had a fear of not appearing strong. And part of the reason why this happened is there was a conflict with his father's legacy. He despised his father. His father was Unoka, and Unoka was indebted and considered weak. So he wanted to be the opposite of his dad, and he hated his dad. Um, Okonkwo rose to power through successful farming and by being a successful warrior. So that elevated his status. He was growing a lot of, I think it was taro, and then or the yam, and he was also very successful warrior when there was conflict with other tribes. Um, so the novel kind of details quite like a various group of Igbo, which is, the tribes, customs, beliefs, and rituals. And, this is kind of where it started to get a little bit strange to read. Um, I mean, it definitely talked about some things that were like ridiculous, like them killing twins. So, like, twins would be born, they would kill them. But in general, it basically just highlights the tribalness of Igbo. But there was a nice thing about it as well, where it showed the practice of reading stories to each other and the verbal, the oratory importance of the tribe. Again, of reading stories by heart, saying it to each other around a fire, and how important that is. So, it was kind of like a mix of that. It wasn't just the bad. So Okonkwo's tragic flaw in the book was his fear of failure and weakness. That pretty much led to his downfall. Um, and that really happened during the collision with colonialism. So there was the arrival of European missionaries and colonial administrators that basically disrupted the traditional Igbo society. The traditional Igbo society kind of worked like this. If you didn't fall in line with what Igbo tradition is, you get kicked out. So you are gay, you have a child out of wedlock, you keep your twin babies, so you have babies but you don't kill them. Um, Anything out of line, you get kicked out. And then what the European missionaries did, they came in and they just took all the rejects. And that created a weird power thing because by kicking people out, that created kind of like their justice system. However, when the European missionaries came in, when they got kicked out, they had a place to go, and then what does that show the people that could be kicked out? Oh, well, I can go somewhere, and it could be even better. And they have like more food and all this fancy stuff and buildings and books and Jesus and all that stuff. So, um, the next theme is some resistance and change. So Okonkwo struggles against the changing social and political structure. So again, because of the colonialism, because of the missionaries coming in, there's a struggle because Okonkwo kind of is this like alpha male success under the old school way of doing things, kind of like your stereotypical alpha male. But what happens when your stereotypical alpha male is living in a different world with different rules and different, the politics are different, and that's where Okonkwo really struggles, and that's where it kind of ends bad, and he basically kills himself. So it's a tough one. Let's see. So where should I go next? I guess I should go into some general trivia. So this book was published in 1958. It was written in English originally. However, it does incorporate Igbo phrases and proverbs, which I'll get into. It had a huge impact on African literature. It basically challenged the Western perceptions of African culture. That's why it was uncomfortable for me to read. Um, and I've spoken to people that are from Nigeria and from the area, and from other countries in the area, and that's where they really like it. Um, those those people really like it, and it made me think about it differently. Um, However, it's still uncomfortable to read, I think. Um, this title, Things Fall Apart, it comes from a W.B. Yeats poem, The Second Coming. The significance of this book is it's considered a classic of modern African literature, and it's widely studied in schools worldwide. So this book is quite the popular. Um, and probably because it kind of flips the script. It kind of flips colonialism upside down. And, the more I think about it, the more I kind of agree that it has some truth to it. Um, it wasn't just muscle that won in colonialism. There was definitely a sort of moral superiority, especially with the killing of the twins thing. There's definitely a moral superiority of the missionaries that came in that kind of just succeeded. Um, it's also important from a historical perspective to keep in mind that slavery wasn't created by colonialism. Um, Hundreds of years before there was colonialism, slavery was very popular in Africa, where purely African empires were rich on the business of slavery. That was their major export. In fact, one of the um, famous emperors was so rich from this that when he traveled, he just created inflation wherever he went. He was basically the richest person in the world of all time, richer than Bezos, richer than Elon Musk, if you account for inflation, of course. And it's basically off of slavery. So again, I'm not justifying colonialism in general. I'm not saying that colonialism it was perfect and everything was done great, especially with transatlantic slave trade. But it's definitely showing that perspective of like, huh, maybe the way the societies were set up weren't so ethical, moral, great, and kind. Um, the themes of this novel are tradition versus change. Um, yeah, I mean that's a tough one. Tradition versus change. It's like how important is tradition, how important is change? In my opinion, it's important on moderation. It's actually you have to moderate tradition and change because the world changes. Look at ChatGPT. How much that changed everything. How are you supposed to adapt to it and be successful? Is it just ignore it and pretend it doesn't exist? Is it use it to like defraud people? No. There's a moderation. Masculinity. So that's a good one. I like that one because it's almost like you shouldn't be that stereotypical dude that's like, eh. Like we kind of all know through feminism and just like the 90s, 80s, that it's just that's a kind of a funny thing, just be like this, like and also the fear of not looking masculine. And it's okay for a man to be sensitive sometimes. It's okay for a man to have feelings. It's okay for a man to be sad and cry. Uh, and then the impact of colonialism, and that's where things really get gray in terms of colonialism. Is it? It's not black and white, pun intended. It's not black and white. Colonialism was the most terrible thing in the world, um, which just sounds bad to say. But listen, there's a reason why this book resonated with a large percentage of African people. There's a reason why this resonated with a large group of people worldwide, and it's it's kind of interesting. It's that's what made this book so popular because it was insightful in that regard. Um, this book has been translated into more than 50 languages. Once again, that doesn't happen to most books. Um, and actually, this is a part of a trilogy. So there's two other books, No Longer at Ease, and then Arrow of God. And I have not read those. However, after recording this, I am kind of interested in reading those. So I may read it actually. This book has been adapted into radio, stage, and film adaptations, and yeah, it's interesting. It's definitely if you are of the if you were taught in a Western civ manner and taught about slavery and taught about all that stuff, especially in America, I think, where it's slavery is like pounded down your throat, in some way, just justly. It was pretty terrible, but it definitely flips the script and it makes you think about it in a different way that's uncomfortable, and that's I think the reason why I didn't like it.